Hi you guys, I'm Phil Town from Rule 1 Investing, and today I want to talk to you about a little bit of Wall Street gibberish called earnings per share. Now, in order to become a successful investor, it's important to thoroughly familiarize yourself with a few investment basics. One of the basics you probably heard of before is called earnings per share, and I want you to understand it better. So today we're going to dive into it and look a little closer on how to calculate it. What does it mean? We're going to look at the benefits and the drawbacks of using earnings per share to guide investment decisions. So what's earnings per share? Earnings per share, also known as EPS, is a company's net income divided by the number of shares the company has outstanding. And it's one of the most important measurements of a company's profitability. It's used really widely. EPS is typically reported each quarter when a company releases its earnings report. If the company is profitable for the quarter, its EPS will be positive. If the company loses money over a given quarter, it'll report a negative EPS. The quarterly estimates of EPS are very important for the short-term movement of the company's stock. So we really want to kind of keep track of what's going on with EPS. So how to calculate earnings per share? EPS can be calculated using the following simple equation. EPS equals net income divided by the average outstanding shares. Now, since the number of outstanding shares a company has is going to vary because they're buying back their stock, maybe they're selling a little bit of stock, they have stock options, a more accurate measurement of EPS is obtained by averaging the number of shares over a given time. However, if you just want to be simple about it, which is how I like to do it, you can use the current outstanding shares and still get a pretty accurate measurement. For example, if a company has a net income of 20 million and has an average of 10 million shares, the EPS of the company will be about $2. So what's the significance of earnings per share? Well, obviously EPS shows how much money a company is making for its shareholders on a per share basis. But more important is looking at the company's EPS over time gives us an idea of how fast the company is growing. We get a growth rate for EPS. Ideally, if you want to invest in a company that's been steadily increasing its EPS from quarter to quarter, you're going to find companies that have a very consistent, steady growth rate of earnings. So this is how we calculate it. So looking at EPS gives you a more accurate evaluation of a company's performance than just looking at the earnings alone, although you definitely want to look at both of these things, right? If you look at just the earnings by themselves, you're looking at the company through the lens of a single owner, like a Warren Buffett or a Charlie Munger, who owns the whole company. But we're not a single owner. We own shares of the company. So when we look at the EPS, or earnings per share, we're getting an idea of how the company's doing for us on each individual share. Also, really important to understand that if a company is buying back its own stock or using the shares of stock diluting your interest, you wouldn't necessarily see that if you're looking at it just from the point of view of actual earnings. You will see it, however, when you start dividing those earnings by the number of shares that are outstanding. The more shares the company buys back, the higher the EPS goes, which is good for us. The more shares the company spends in diluting by, let's say, paying its officers shares of stock, the lower the earnings per share go. And meanwhile, the company has the same exact earnings overall. So very important to understand earnings per share. So what are the drawbacks of earnings per share? Here's the problem. Earnings per share can sometimes be deceptive. Kind of devious managers can play around with earnings per share in a way that makes them look quite good, even maybe when there's some problems. Earnings per share, for example, are calculated using a method of accounting called accrual accounting. And in this method, what you consider a profit can be something where the money hasn't even been paid yet. You just made the sale. On the other hand, expenses which haven't been paid yet are actually written off as having been paid. So it's real interesting how they can play with this, almost like kind of cheating if they want to. And there are really good reasons why companies, play around with accrual accounting in a lot of good ways and in a lot of bad ways. One of the bad ways is to go out and buy back stock by paying a price for the company's shares that's far above the value of the company. That's a really horrendous use of my money, my equity, to go out and spend too much to buy the stock. But it really benefits the managers because they can drive the stock price up by increasing the earnings per share. So it can be a little bit devious, but we need to know that people are using earnings per share in lots of ways. It's one of the ways we look at a company. So this does make EPS a little more difficult to use as a great gauge of a company's performance. We wouldn't want to use it all by itself, because there are companies that are going to report a positive earnings per share even though they're losing money and about to go bankrupt. That can happen too. So with that being the case, it's much better to look at the growth of earnings over time as well as earnings compared, and here's a really important thing, to cash flow rather than just taking earnings at face value. So what do we use them for? Number one, the growth rate of the company's growth. We use earnings per share to check that. And we check earnings per share against cash flow to see if these guys are messing with earnings per share. Hopefully that helps you guys. Did you enjoy this video? If you did, leave a comment below with your answer and I'll be sure to follow up with you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and now go play. If you enjoyed this video and you feel it was valuable in teaching you more about investing basics, hit the like button and please share this video with your friends. And if you want more investing content, just subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the button on the screen for a free gift. And thanks again for watching.